what I'd really love to interview you about today, Kathrine,
Thank you.
is your artistic ability. We're sitting in your sitting room and I'm seeing some paintings on the wall, and I was just wondering, are they all your own work?
Yes. Yes, everyone's my own. I didn't start painting till I was 43, actually. But I was always good at art at school, and I got a 2-year evening scholarship when I lived in Worcester at the Royal Victoria Institute. So that started me off. We weren't really taught a lot, but it was an opportunity to spend 2 hours 3 times a week and do things that we felt we'd like to do. And that was how I started. But when I left school, I'd rather let it go because there were so many other things to do, and there were boys, and things like that. And I really neglected the art, except for doing posters for youth clubs and things like that. And I took it up again after I'd had my 4 children. I can tell you, I'm 43, I can't work it out. But they'd all gone to school, and I thought, now's my chance. So I went to Dovedale for 2 terms. They were both in the winter because nobody came back after Christmas to this class. I would have liked to go on, but nobody else did. But that started me on doing oil painting, which I'd always had a yearning for, and I love John Constable. He's my favourite artist. And suddenly everything opened up for me. I found I could do a lot more than I thought I could, and I learnt oil to put the oils onto the picture, and that was what I really wanted to do. And then it went from there. And I made some little cards out, and I showed some friends some pictures, and I started giving out cards to people around, and gradually I got some orders. This is really where the old tramp bundles came into the picture. And my family moved down to Chelmsford, and all my mother's family had lived at Sandon. So I was always familiar with Chelmsford. It was sort of my base, if you like. And then that's where we saw bundles, the dear old bundles. I remember when I was younger than that, I was working in London, and for the first time I saw people lying on benches and in jock doorways and in a terrible, pitiful state, and all us smart office people marching past, and that was really, I really thought of and felt awful about people who were homeless. And when we came to Chelmsford, all my family were interested in this dear man who'd apparently been walking around for years and years, and we were all familiar with him. He didn't talk. My mother tried to talk to him sometimes, but we were all we sort of loved him as a character of the town. We loved Bundles as a person. I mean, more of my heart went out to a person of that variety who lived that sort of life, and wondering why he did it, and feeling awful when you saw him looking in dustbins. It was really quite a strong feeling. So at that time he died. He died about 1976, I think, when I was going to art school, and I saw a wonderful picture of him in the Essex Chronicle, and I thought, and all of a sudden the idea showed up of painting him, because he was such a striking character. And so I got a picture from the Essex Chronicle and did a kind of somebody called it a mixed impressionism, and it was a bit mixed because it was really my first big picture I'd done, and I put all little bits of Chelmsford, old Chelmsford, newer Chelmsford, and bundles, and all things like to represent what sort of a figure he was. And I think I must have done it quite well, because lots of people have said to me since, I remember Bundles so well, and I think I must have caught on that from that photograph the person he was. And I had so many letters from people, and they were all thrilled, because they said we've known this man all our lives, and it really gave me a great bit of pleasure. And there's been a lot of interest over the years in it, much to my pleasure, because I didn't really do it for any special purpose, but it's given me a lot of pleasure, and it's evoked a lot of pity, sympathy, querying about this man, Lord Bundles. When I came to Chelmsford to live in 1954, we were suddenly aware, my family and I, of this very strange man who walked the streets and was known as Bundles. The reason being, we think, because he had a bundle of something hanging from every finger, it seemed. It hung down, and he was bowed down with these bundles, and as far as you could see, there was only bits of wood and string and something. You couldn't really identify what they were supposed to be. But he was very, very mysterious, pathetic, really, because I think since I worked in London when I was younger, I cried when I saw people sleeping in doorways and on benches in the parks, and I've always been very sensitive to people who were really down and out and that other people looked down on. Because there were people who also didn't know who he was, who would assume that he was done something awful or had something awful wrong with him. But to me, he was a figure of I had to empathise with him, and I didn't know who he was or why he did what he did. But I went to painting classes that year. And at that time there was a photograph in the Essex Chronicle of this man. He actually died then, I think it was 1975 or 76, and there was a picture in the Essex Chronicle that was absolutely typical. I thought it was a wonderful picture of him, just the figure walking down Duke Street, I think it was, and I decided I'd like to paint him and see what I could make of it, and put little bits of Chelmsford in the background, old bits of Chelmsford that I could find out from books and my own observation. And when I took it to art school to show them, they were quite interested. They thought, oh, this is not bad. Why don't you tell the Chronicle? So I did tell them that I'd done it, and the photographer came up, and a reporter, and I told them and showed them what I'd done, and they very kindly did a little article about Bundles and about my painting him, and I got loads of letters from people who remembered him and were of the same mind really as myself. And I must say that I found out that Bundles was very kindly treated, and he had many gifts given him. He had food given him. People said my mum used to cook him a dinner every month when he came round, and it was most interesting. So I put it all away, and then I had an idea, because so many people had written to me and they liked it. I decided to offer it to the museum, Oaklands Park Museum, and they bought it off me, and it's been in their permanent collection ever since.
That has now been adopted as part of the National Collection. Tell me about that.
Oh yes, there's some people at the National Gallery phoned me up and said that they were collecting pictures all over the country, a county at a time, and they were doing Essex at the moment, of pictures that hung in public places all over the country, because the government wouldn't give the money, didn't get money to do it. They got this committee together, and they asked me if they could have the copyright. So I said yes, and was very, very thrilled to think this had happened. So it was quite a long time after I painted it. So that was a very lovely thing that happened. And I also found out on that occasion that the picture, although it's not always in the museum, it comes out for exhibitions from time to time. I found that there was a man called Mr. Randall, a very nice man who is a solicitor with Grays in Duke Street, and he'd hired my picture from the museum and had it hanging in his chambers for 7 years. So this was absolutely amazing. So I rang him up, and he said he'd received a letter from me, and yes, he was going to do something about it. He was going to contact me, but I went to see him at his chambers and saw the picture hanging up, and he said that when the solicitors completed Bundle's estate when he died, because he had a family, although we don't know much about them. Well, I wanted to buy it actually, but the museum said no. So he'd found out about this renting pictures and had it. He loved the picture because he always was like me. He always thought he was such a character in Chelmsford, humble though he be.
And they asked you to paint another one?
Well, yes, he was. He said, would I paint him one? And I said, yes, I'll paint you another one the same size, but I'll do a different background, because the background of the first one was more like an impressionism. So I painted him the same man walking through Central Park with the viaduct and the park and a few people and the bit of the lake, and it was my great pleasure to do it.